Welcome to On the Media's very first live stream ever.
Good afternoon, I'm Joe Baker, a member of the Delaware Tribe of Indians.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sari Kamen. I am the Public Programs Director of MOFAD, the Museum of Food and Drink. We are so excited to have you with us tonight. For those of you that don't know us, we are a small little non-for-profit museum based in New York City. For over a year now, we have done all of our programming online, and I know many of you have been coming to these programs every single month. It has been absolutely such a joy to collaborate with the Green Space on our Food for Thought series. This is our 9th virtual program with them, which is so incredible that we've been doing it for this long. It's been such an amazing experience. We've been connecting with people from all over the country, all over the world. We've had programs featuring panelists also from all over the world, from places like Aichi, Japan, from Italy. Tonight we have our panelists coming in all the way from Albania, which is absolutely incredible. So, you know, it's been a really, really tough year, but certainly for me at least, working at MOFAD, the absolute best part of it has been extending our global community and making connections in a way we never really thought were possible before. So I really want to thank all of you for supporting us during this time. This is bittersweetly our last virtual program that we're doing with the Green Space. We really hope to return to in-person programs with them sometime in the fall. So for those of you in New York City, please make sure you're subscribing to the MOFAD newsletter, you're subscribing to the Green Space so you can stay in touch with us. And if you're not in New York City, you know, now that the world is reopening, please, please, please come visit us. It would be so wonderful to see you in person after this very long year of being together on Zoom, which has really been wonderful. So with that, I want to turn it over to our panelists in Albania. I'm so excited to learn so much tonight. I know it's going to be a new food culture for many of us tuning in. I want our panelists to just quickly say hello and introduce themselves before we really kick off the show. So I'll just call on them. Dorata, let's start with you. Just gotta unmute.
Sorry, do you hear me?
I do.
Should I start first?
Yes, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Dorata Thanasi. I'm a food enthusiast and historian. I studied in Albanian University. My first degree is in journalism, and the second one, I am a agri-environmentalist engineer. So I started to study the food history 10 years ago. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Dorata. And just tell us what time it is in Albania for you right now.
Well, now it's 1 o'clock a.m. So it's I am a pretty I go very early to bed, but I wake up very early also. At 5:30, I'm awake, so
Okay.
I start my daily routine.
Thank you for staying up with us tonight, or waking
Thank
up
you.
so early.
Thank you for having me.
Irida.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hello from Holland. I'm Albanian. I left Albania when I was very young. I'm a food lover. My profession, I'm a life coach and a career coach. I am here because we have co-founded a movement, which I'll share a bit more later, a movement that's related to food and gender and obviously women. So yeah, it's really good to be here.
Thank you. Gazmend. You're on mute.
Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking from Chicago. My name is Gazmend Kaplani, and I direct the Hidayah Dibrego program in Albanian Studies at DePaul University, where I also teach a class on Albanian and Balkan food. I'm also a journalist and an author of 4 published novels. Some of them have been translated into English, and that's all. And I hope that you'll enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Gazmend. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nikoline Kola, who has been working with us on this program for so long and has really just helped bring us all together. So I'm so happy to turn it over to him, and he will start the show. So thank you so much again, everyone, and enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sari, for the kind introduction. And thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity. My name is Nikoline Kola. I am an entrepreneur who happened to fall in love with gastronomy on the last 2 years. And that happened not by chance, but by the fact that I have a brother who is a chef. So his name is Bledar Kola, and he will be actually closing this show tonight by doing a cooking demo. So both of us, over almost 20 years ago, we decided to go to United Kingdom, where we spend almost 10 years of our time, obviously in 2 different directions. Bledar became a chef, and I followed my passion for technology. Then after spending several years in studying and working back in UK, we decided to come back home. We had that urge of coming back home and doing something that would make a change. So Bledar started following his path on gastronomy after several years in exploring different cuisines like French, Italian, and Japanese cuisine. He decided to come back in Albania and rediscover his roots via Albanian cuisine. So at the time when we came back home, we felt that there was a cacophony of voices when it came to the Albanian foodscape. We had two different categories of people who thought that the one side of one part of those people believed that the Albanian traditional food should be staying on the museum, whereas the other part believed that everything should be Western and European. Now, before I continue with the story how we created RNO and the mission of our foundation, I would like to briefly talk about a brief discussion about the history of Albanian gastronomy. And I'm just sharing in a second a small presentation which I would like to go briefly. Okay. Sorry, just 1 second. These things always happen on the last minute, and not. But I'll just go without the presentation. I'm sorry for the small interruption. So basically, Albania as a country is located between Italy and Greece, as many of you know, and as it has historically been at the crossroad of many empires and civilization, from Greek, Roman, Byzantine and Ottoman Empire. That has given Albania a position that is somehow at the heart of the birth of Western civilizations, but yet it has been for so many maybe centuries outside of the main stream of European history. And the same way, over the centuries, the Albanian cuisine has strongly been influenced by the culinary cultures of its Mediterranean, Balkan and neighbors and the cuisine of the Ottoman period. Unfortunately, Albania's rich and wonderful gastronomic tradition were almost destroyed during the times of almost half century of communist dictatorship. The poverty, along with isolation and collectivization of the state control agricultural production, has almost dismantled every ecosystem of small farmers and artisan producers. However, the real big challenge happened during the post-communism transition years. Globalization, along with the massive migration and the chaotic industrialization of food system, really became the biggest problem of the Albanian gastronomy. It was almost, at the time when we came back from UK, it was almost impossible to find restaurants that were serving decent Albanian cuisine. So with this in mind, in 2018, we decided to host an event that we thought is going to bring some changes into the Albanian foodscape. Basically, what we wanted to do was to shake the status quo of the existing players of the Albanian gastronomy. And when I meant the existing players and the existing stakeholders, I mean the two groups which I mentioned earlier. One group of chefs that were thinking that Albanian gastronomy should stay on museum untouched, and the other side that wanted to do everything modern. So in this way, we thought, okay, how can we bring some changes into this foodscape? And the way we thought that is going to be is to bring, to get our Albanian diaspora involved. So what we did, we engaged 12 Albanian chefs that were living abroad, and we matched those 12 chefs with 12 grandmothers that were selected in 12 different regions of Albania. Each of those grandmothers had the task to select a recipe, and they had to work together with one of those 12 chefs. So on the 18th of September of 2018, we hosted a show in Tirana where we brought together those chefs, those young chefs from abroad, those young Albanian chefs from abroad, together with the grandmothers, and the task of the show was to open a debate about the Albanian cuisine. Basically, the questions which we wanted to the audience or the players of the Albanian gastronomy to the question we wanted to raise were: what is Albanian cuisine? What is tradition? What is should we define Albanian cuisine by recipes, by techniques, by ingredients? What is Albanian cuisine? Is it Mediterranean? Is it continental? Is it Balkan? Is it Ottoman? What will be the future of Albanian cuisine? What are the how are we going to deal with the forces of globalization and food industry? What are the signatures? What are the signature dishes of Albanian cuisine, and so on? So basically, by opening this discussion, we somehow created a disruption within the Albanian gastronomy. Created disruption because we were able to open the debate and somehow offer the young chefs an alternative, embrace them, make them aware about the opportunities of Albanian cuisine, and also let them know that there is so much that can be done with Albanian cuisine. Now, the event of our event, which we hosted on September 2018, was an event that was basically a stepping stone for our organization. An organization that aims at this moment of time to preserve, develop, and promote Albanian gastronomy worldwide. Now, what we decided to do after the event was to convert this movement into a structured organization that will continue the work of preserving, developing, and promoting. And why we believe that preserving, why would we believe that our work should be these are the main three pillars of our work? Because we believe that the people who have the memories of Albanian cuisine are almost 65 years or over. So there is almost an urgent need to document those traditions. On the other side, we strongly believe that the best way to preserve a cuisine is by developing it. So instead of just being radical on and fanatical on preserving what we have inherited from our ancestors, we believe that the best way to preserve it is by developing it. And we use our motto is a wise saying by Gustav Mahler, which says, the tradition is not the worship of ashes, but is the preservation of fire. So we believe that the best way to preserve Albanian cuisine is by developing it. And this is exactly the discussion where we're aiming to open with our show, with our first show. The discussion was to talk about new Albanian cuisine. And we believe that we have created a synergy between diaspora chefs, the young chefs of the culinary schools, and the grandmothers who are those who kept our heritage alive. Now, after our show, we actually went in a research program and on a research project in several areas of Albania. And what we have actually found out is that the best Albanian cuisine can be found within the people's houses. Within the people's houses, inside those houses where those grandmothers keep the tradition alive on day-to-day basis. And from this point, we decided that in order to maintain these traditions, we need to start a project. And this was the very basis of our new project, which is Nana Cooking, which I will be happy to explain at the end of this show. So it is my first experience to have an event at this hour of night, and as you can see, I'm not very comfortable, but this is what I had to say for my first talk. So I will handle to my rest of the team, and this case, in our case, in this moment, I would like to handle it to Dhurata.
Hello. As I introduced myself before, my name is Dhurata Thanasi, and I like to call myself a food historian. I was born and spent part of my childhood in the last years of the communist regime in Albania, because I'll start my presentation from that time. Those were very difficult years as a result of the total isolation that Albania was passing as a result of the regime of that time. Not only freedom of expression, but also that of thought were completely impossible. And at the same time, people experienced poverty, even though they lived in a rich country, both in nature and human resources. The communist regime of that time had created a very rigid, controlling, and centralized governance mechanisms, which ensured a sustainable but very poor agriculture production. So in short, people lived with fewer things, but did not die of hunger. One of the characteristics of that time was the lack of people's freedom of movement. You know, people couldn't move freely within the country unless they had a reason to move. So unless they had a relative in another city to visit, they had no other reason to move from the place or their city they were living in. The financial opportunities to spend money for tourism were very limited because everything was controlled, and people were having what I can say, the salary was more or less the same for all the people, so they had no means to spend their money elsewhere. So only 2-week periods of holidays the families had in their annual holidays, so they could only visit the touristic facilities. As a result of this lack of movement, Albanians had very little or no accurate knowledge about their cuisine and gastronomy. When I talk about the cuisine and gastronomy, I mean the cuisine of different regions. Albanians didn't know very much about the cuisine of different regions, which means the Albanians of the North Albania knew very little about or nothing about the cuisine and gastronomy of the southern regions, due to the fact that at that time, to the cuisine as a cultural and historical element, it was not given the importance it is given today, nowadays. The introduction of social food, it was called social food or ushqimi social, a basic culinary methodology brought by the Russians and Bulgarian schools, had played somewhat obstructive role in the professional culinary school system during the 60s in Albania. Local cuisine was never studied in a vocational school of tourism and cuisine. All tourist service and hotels, restaurants were owned by the regime. Hotels and restaurants offered the same service in their interior design as well as in food. In a way, the regime of that time not only did not evoke traditional local cuisine, but left them in oblivion. Quite the opposite happened in Albanian families, where each of them in daily life cooked family recipes according to their family tradition. Exactly in 2010, when I returned to Albania from the United States of America, where I was studying, I noticed a gap in the documentation of the Albanian cuisine. Although some restaurants and chefs already knew Albanian gastronomic scene, and some very well-known restaurants had started to bring not only local recipes, but also cooked with local ingredients in their restaurants, I still noticed a poverty in the documentation of the gastronomy. So I slowly started collecting all the recipes in the Albanian regions from south to north. Thanks to my work, I was working back then in the rural system as a project officer in one of the most known Albanian NGOs or a non-profit organization. And having this opportunity, I visit most extreme provinces of Albania and regions of Albania. In addition to recipes and old recipes, wherever I could go, I could ask grandmothers, people in the region about recipes, but I also collected and documented the behaviors, the customs, the rare synonyms used of different dishes, dialects, folklore, songs, and dances that accompanied the food. For the first time in Albania, but also in the Balkans, we are talking about the history of the cuisine and gastronomy as an important part of the culture of people. After a year or so, Silver Spoon blog, which means in Albanian is Luga Argjant, was born by me as the first food column in a very well-known newspaper, which talked about gastronomy and history, which at that time gained a lot of fame, and it was clicked more than political articles. Another aspect of my work, in addition to documenting the history and gastronomy of old recipes, was the education and the educating children in school and kindergartens on the nutrition and the knowledge of local products. Silver Spoon united groups of young food enthusiasts, chefs, activists, students, and food producers who participate now in a public debate about the current issues and introduce young people to the world of gastronomy, especially in schools when I go almost every month and teach them and school communities about the culture of food and the history of food. Through our unique events and activities, we raise awareness about the important food issues, such as how to feed the world, food waste, which is very imminent and very crucial now in the times that we're living, and sustainable food production, stimulating positive actions in schools and communities. many cooks, as Nick mentioned before, in the recent years have mastered their skills abroad. They came back, like Bledar, they came back home to contribute to the gastronomic renaissance of this country. Well-known restaurants like Mrizi Zanave, Muligiu are real food role models, I would say, like role models, not only preserving the Albanian cuisine, but also promoting it in Europe and worldwide. Some of the most visionary chefs that we have in Albania have dramatically contributed in their reinventing and giving a new life to Albanian gastronomic heritage. It is also thanks to them that today Albania hosts one of the most vibrant food scenes in the whole Balkans, I would say, and in all Europe. I would finish and close my discussion with a short note, which I do talk and share every day in my everyday life and in the schools and communities I work every day with. Defending, protecting, and promoting biodiversity is therefore not simply one among a number of choices. It is rather the only viable path forward. It is a moral duty that we, as a generation that inhabits this historical moment that we are passing and we're having, must take for those who will come after us and will live in this planet Earth, a planet that today we are trampling, hurting, and mistreating. I want to close in this note that I like so much, that and I share with people every day as a food historian. Food history is as important as a Baroque church. Governments should recognize cultural heritage and protect traditional food. A cheese, according not only to me, but to a lot of historians, is as worthy as preserving a 16th century building and should be like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorata. Thanks a lot for your great speech. And I wish I was also that fluent, but that's the thing when you start first.
Yeah,
thank you.
I know.
Irida, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Dorata, and thanks, Nick. As you were talking, Dorata, you transported me to Albanian childhood memories of food. And I was going to start on a different note, but I was going to pick up on some of that memory because living in communist Albania with the scarcity that food scarcity that was around, I just realized what that meant for adults. I was a child. I wasn't probably aware enough to know what that meant, but it meant so much resilience around being living and putting food on the table, and being inventive and creative with a few ingredients. So yes, very appreciative of that. So I want to take just a few minutes to talk about food and gender, not as a theoretical argument, but more as an observer, as a woman, as a mother. When I think of memories of food as a child, what springs up for me is mother, grandmother, aunts, cooking in the kitchen, chatting, laughing, sharing stories, talking, rolling up their sleeves and with utmost confidence, getting on with it and cooking. And this is not about having learned a recipe from a book. This is about oral traditions. This is about a culture and inheritance that was passed on from mother to mother, from neighbor to neighbor, from aunt to daughter, and so on and so on. Mostly from a female lineage, as far as I'm aware. And that was part of bonding, part of women socializing, and it was for me as a child. I remember it was a joy. It was amazing to be around women cooking. As a young girl, my mother taught me to cook. It's what mothers did, and I learned to cook traditional dishes. And I'm very grateful for that today, for that education. I can put a meal together in half an hour, and I've got the basis of it. I don't need to do a traditional meal, but I've got the basis of cooking, so I can improvise. So I'm immensely grateful for that today. But gender role is not what I want to talk about, but it's inevitable that when you talk about women and mothers and food, it is about gender. And I came to appreciate the role of women in preserving food, in developing food, in evolving food throughout centuries around the world. And so in discussing that with Nikoline and people around, it became very clear that there is such a paradox that we're living in, and such a gap, and that lies ahead of us. And that is that there is such a low percentage of women that are represented in the public sphere, in the domain of the food industry, in the kitchen. So if you just go to Google and search the percentage of women as in the roles of top chefs out there, it is very low, dramatically low. There are many whys, there are many questions, there are many, you could go into discussions, endless discussions, but those discussions need to take place. They have started as part of gender discussions, but those discussions need to roll out even more. And that's why we thought, why not do something about it? Why not start something? And so we started an initiative that we called, it's a woman's cuisine. My first initial reaction was, what is a woman's cuisine? As a feminist, I felt this was somehow discriminating and putting women in their place. This was my first reaction. And Nikoline said, actually, no. So he actually shared his perspective, and I felt, okay, that's right, that's fine. And so we started the initiative. It's a very new initiative. The aim of the initiative is to open discussions around women's role in the public sphere as chefs, encouraging women to take those roles, encouraging men to support women to take those roles, encouraging companies, industries, food industries, restaurants to support women in shining, in putting food in the table for people, not just for families, of course, but it's to share that creative gift. But also, it's not just the open discussions, but also it's in a way, it's to actually contribute to acknowledging the role of women everywhere in the world. The role that women have played forever in relationship to food. And it is because it is a force of love that keeps families together and keeps cultures alive and thriving. And ultimately, it is love in action. Throughout millennia, women have put food on the table, and that is purely love in action, nothing less. And it's that continuity, day in and day out, that bringing a meal on the table enables us to be physically and emotionally feeling a sense of security and love that we as individuals can actually grow. Now, that for me as a message, if we can spread that message, if we can raise awareness to acknowledge the role of women in history as mothers and as grandmothers, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you for your beautiful presentation. I am full awake now. Thanks a lot. Really, it was a delightful speech. Gazmend, now the floor is yours, all back in US.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Nikoline, for the invitation to this special evening. And thank you for having me here and for sharing all this. Discussions and conversations about food always get very personal because food and memory maintain a special relationship, and so much so that even traumatic events are unable to delete memories of food. So as the only writer here who focuses on topics of identity and memory, I would like to share a few personal memories about smells and foods that defined my Albanian childhood. I lived in a small town called Lushnje, close to the shores of the Adriatic Sea, and I would start with honey. My childhood was literally revolved and surrounded by honey and hives. It smelled fresh and as grass. Now, my father's family had once been small landowners in Albania, but when the Albanian communists came to power in 1945, after the end of World War II, they drove the family violently out of their home in the countryside and confiscating their lands. And in hindsight, I believe that beekeeping was a way for the family to stick together around a common passion and help them also to keep the contact with the countryside. The large family gatherings I remember as a child often were turned into lengthy, passionate debates about honey and its shades, and of course about the fascinating lives of bees, especially about their extraordinary ability to sense fear and anxiety in humans. And from this point of view, I guess that Albanian bees should have been very busy during communism. Now, in the mythology of the adults of my family, honey cured everything from agoraphobia to arthritis. And actually, honey occupies a special place not only in the Albanian, but also in the Balkan mythology. So much that there is an explanation of the etymology of the word Balkan as if coming from a combination of two Turkish words, bal meaning blood, and kan meaning honey, which is not true, but it's meaningful. The word Balkans, of course, is an Ottoman word that means mountain. But given that we are talking about bees and flora, for those who don't know, Albanians live mainly today in Albania and Kosovo, lands that are located in one of the planet's biodiversity hotspots. The geographical position of Albania on the northern shore of the Mediterranean Sea makes the country a sort of natural crossroads where converge the different flora elements from the Mediterranean, the Balkanic, the European, and the Eurasian. And that kind of hybridity, I think, characterizes also the Albanian cuisine. Now, you cannot obviously, because you all have lived in Albania, imagine an Albanian household without the smell of burek and coffee. These are the staples of traditional gastronomic identity. Coffee especially constitutes a social institution in Albania. And the smell of coffee dominated literally my childhood. Now, coffee is one of the most political drinks in the world. It even played a crucial role in the competition between East and West during the Cold War. The shortages of coffee in East Germany, for example, were one of the main reasons that triggered the East German uprising against the communist regime in the 50s and in the 70s. Also, in the isolated Albania of the Cold War, the ultimate indication that the regime was counting its days was the moment in the mid-80s when the country ran out of coffee. Albanians have experienced a particularly tumultuous history in the 20th century, especially with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the nationalistic wars that succeeded them. The Albanian lands, in the span of less than 50 years from the end of the 19th century until mid-20th century, were occupied, pillaged, and put to fire by 7 foreign armies, national and imperial alike. This has never happened to any country in Europe. But even in its worst days, during the Balkan Wars or during the German occupation, coffee had never disappeared in Albania. And its disappearance during communism was experienced like an apocalyptic event. I remember it very well. And people understood that the political system, which is unable to provide coffee for the people, has no future. And I'm mentioning now this food facts connecting to politics because the Cold War has been told from all possible angles: ideology, dirty games of secret services, nuclear competition. It has never been told, though, from the food and gastronomic point of view. I strongly believe that telling the gastronomic history of the Cold War would be both didactic and fascinating. Now, meanwhile, we know a little bit more about how totalitarian regimes affected greatly food habits and gastronomy in Albania and in the Eastern Bloc. As for Albania, which from 1945 to 1991 was what we might call a perfect totalitarian society that is isolated completely from the rest of the world, and under a violent terror and dictatorship. As the Rada said, the effects on food were devastating. They pushed the Albanian gastronomy into a total impasse. In the 70s, the Albanian communist regime embraced a paranoid version of nationalism, dipped in xenophobia and strengthened the terror and the isolation of their country. So that brought, among other things, the total collapse of the economy and subsequently an unprecedented scarcity of food. My adolescent years were painfully shaped by the realities of rationing, empty shelves in the stores, and long, endless queues almost for any product and commodity. What has not been sufficiently analyzed, because I heard Irida about gender and food is that the destruction of gastronomic tradition was not only accompanied by growing repression and terror, but also by the further marginalization of women. For example, we have the criminalization of abortion and the paranoid attempt to raise women's fertility when the rationing arrived and reached its peak, like Albania and Romania were the same. And in general, as scholars say, as food become more and more scarce, the daily experience of preparing food became sometimes an unbearable burden for women. Women had to improvise and create recipes while food and cooking gradually evolved into a surviving activity. Now, I want to say a few words about the Renault Foundation and its outstanding work, because I think that it has not been understood fully, especially from those who don't know the Albanian reality. So there's a philosopher who wrote extensively about the destruction of tradition by totalitarian regimes, and her name is Hannah Arendt. She never wrote about food, but she says that after such destruction of tradition, there is no way to going back and reconnect with it like before, because it has been lost maybe once and for all. And that can be applied to the gastronomic traditions as well. Once it has been destroyed, it's almost impossible to recuperate it and bring it back in the way it was. So in this case, Arendt said that we should approach tradition like shipwrecked mariners on an island, scavenging for whatever resources can be found after the catastrophe has been completed. So if I were to describe the work done by the Foundation of No in order to reinvent Albanian gastronomy, I would have used this image. And there are two elements that strike me personally in their work. The diasporic dimension that characterizes them after the long years of isolation of Albania from the world. Albanians have always been a diasporic nation and culture, and their stories of migration can be traced from Cairo to Chicago and from Venice to Buenos Aires. Renault has embraced the diasporic dimension. Actually, Renault is a gastronomic movement that was born in the diaspora, which tries to connect the global and the national while reinventing Albanian gastronomy. I don't know of any other gastronomic movement in the Balkans being led by such philosophical and anthropological depth. The fact that women are promoted as leaders of the movement makes Renault an avant-garde gastronomic movement. The revival of gastronomy in Albania, resuscitated from almost total destruction, is something unique. If that happened in another country that is not marginalized, like Albania, it would have made headlines. Now, I have compared the work done by the Renault Foundation with that of the Brothers Grimm in Germany. The same as the Brothers Grimm established a methodology for collecting and recording folk stories and fairy tales that became the basis for German identity and folklore studies, the Renault Foundation is establishing a methodology for collecting and recording food recipes and stories that are becoming the basis for the new Albanian gastronomy, gastronomic identity and food studies. And I believe that because I mentioned the fairy tales, cooking has something in common with fairy tales, because they both constitute the most primordial foundation of every culture and civilization. And they both bridge the gap between the material and the spiritual, the need and the desires, the reality and the imagination. So that's all. And I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to talk here about your work and about the Albanian gastronomy.
Gazmen, thank you so much for your presentation and for your speech. It's always good to hear good words for our work from people who know better. And now we will be jumping in our two cooking demos. And our first cooking demo actually will be a recorded demo, and that will be one of the Nana cooking members. Her name is Durata. Barda, it's too late now. Barda Yano, Fat Barda Yano, although Durata is a great cook as well. Fat Barda Yano will be cooking a specific dish that we chose intentionally, and that dish is called Papara. Papara is a dish which basically is done with, for you that have received the recipe, with the leftover, the bread leftover. So we'll be playing this video to show how Albanian women, in a time where they had little, they had to be inventive and creative to avoid, first of all, food waste, but yet to make something delicious out of bread leftovers. So, and I need to mention that we'll be taking question at the end of the two cooking cooking demos. Thank you. So now we'll be playing the video of.
Hello. Today we are in Tirana, Albania, from Muligio restaurant, and we have here Barda Yano, who is a professional cook. Barda today will cook for us a traditional recipe called Papara. Today with Barda, we have Claudian, who will be Barda's assistant today, and Mikael, who is our cameraman today, helping us showing the ingredients. So Papara is a traditional Albanian dish that is actually has been invented during the communism time, during the time, the poverty times where we had a lack of ingredients such as meat and other dairy products that were not available. So our grandmothers and mothers, they had to be inventive and creative. Instead of throwing out bread, they came into a creative way to make a delicious dish called Papara, which is made, Papara today is made, Papara basically is made with stale bread, so leftover breads, and it has very few simple ingredients, which is stale bread, cheese, butter, olive oil, and if we want mint, oregano, or fresh onions. So Barda, please, can you amundesh Barda na tregosh fillosh punën?
Si fillim, fillojmë me vajin e ullirit. Edhe pak vaj. Marrim bukën e skuqim. Skuqim vaj. Atë nisë këtë?
Jep. Është në rregull. Sa më ajon, ti merr sa dush. Çto hajde varë.
Hidh pak tjetër po?
Po hidhi pak bukën.
Pak gjallë.
So we throw a bit of butter as well. So we get the stale bread. We heat up the olive oil and the butter. And once the olive oil and butter are heated, we keep throwing the small pieces of bread which have been prepared in advance. So the reason why we chose this dish is for several reasons. So we keep frying the bread until it gets caramelized or crispy. Actually, the papara comes in two different versions, in the sweet version and also in the savory version. The sweet version is with sugar, where we add a bit sugar, whereas the savory we use cheese or cheese brine, and in both cases we use meat brine to give a bit of flavor. So Barda is so Barda the sako vazhdon skuqen?
Ja 2 minuta.
So the process of frying the bread comes, it longs only 1 to 2 minutes until all the breads are becoming a bit crispy. So we're going to do the sweet version.
No, it's the salty one.
We're going to do the salty version on this case.
Ja, io direi così che sto specifico.
So bara, sa gjallë dhe vajtë hedhim sajnë.
Preparazione, një lugë, një maj lugë.
So basically we
Një lugë vaj ulliri.
for a two people's portion, we use a teaspoon of olive oil and almost the same amount of butter. So as you can see, you can get a bit closer. Yeah. Was hebben we doen?
Ja, tani edhe më të përkshim brash, se brash më mirë ishte. Tani
Gjatë, pide pak gjatë me këllëm, pardon?
Edhe pak gjallë.
e bëbaj.
So now we throw a bit of olive oil and
Gjallë.
a bit of butter again. So we get the onions. Oh, we move on.
Jo, ja hedhim.
Se të iskushim të shqe dhe i hedhim ujë, po përshim pak.
Okay,
Dhe bashkëm prapë.
so we fry the onions with olive oil and butter. Instead of water, in this case, we use some meat brine.
Hedhim pak.
Fallo noi.
So we let it in a few, actually 1 or 2 minutes until we get the water get boiling. The whole
Ja.
so we get some cheese. Okay. Keep stirring up till it goes. Yeah. So basically, this Barda calls this the sauce of Papara, and then we throw the rest of Papara inside. The rest of fried stale bread. Okay, so let the okay. So we throw a bit of salt. And Claudian now is throwing some
black pepper.
Some black pepper. Para, kjo bëhet gjithmonë kështu me shumë ujë apo me pak ujë?
Kjo
Sa kohë lihet?
e pi ujin gjatë kohës. Në momentin që ne hedhim pjatë, duke ndënjur e pi ujin e fit ujë dhe
So I just asked Parda about the amount of the brine and the water used. So basically, we let it rest until it sucks all the sauce and it moistures. So basically, we have a structure where it's crispy on the outside, but yet it's moistury from the inside. One very important detail is that the stale bread should be dry and should be whole grain. Whole grain, and the best way is to have a sourdough. So based on the consistency, we believe now that it's already done. So a simple process. We let this rest for 2 for 1 or 2 minutes, and then this dish will be ready. The dish is used as a breakfast, but also as a snack as well. So this is a very interesting example of how people in poverty have used their imagination to make the most of the ingredients that they had. Barda, kjo kur është, më thonë, si ka lind kjo? Ka lind nga varfëria, nga...
Kjo është nga në kohët tona që kishte për të ngrënë, sa jonim gjëra të momentit bukë që na ngelej, nga vështirësia që kishim bënim papare për të ushqyer fëmijëve. Faktikisht është më ushqyeshme.
So, this is what Barda is saying. Basically, this was a dish created during the poverty times, so made with just a few ingredients, but however, it's very, very delicious dish because it has all the nutrition values of a whole grain bread, and also it has the moisture that the brine, olive oil, and so basically it's very healthy for kids, but also for adults as well. On the same way, the dish, top it up, we normally add some more cheese on top of it, and that will be our today's papara.
And here we have some mint.
Just a little mint on top of it, and everything will be ready to eat. Barda, shumë faleminderit. Faleminderit edhe ti Klodian. Faleminderit edhe Mikeli. So I'm just thanking Barda and Mikel and Klodian for their help. The same version of this papara can be done also with sugar, so that will be the sweet version. So Barda, thank you again. Barda is actually our main lady chef here, and she's actually she's very proud to be part of Nana Cooking Network, and she's looking forward to open her own restaurant in Ersek in her old house. Again, thank you. Okay, that was the video of Barda doing the traditional dish of papare. Now it's the time that we do the second cooking demo, and that will be the reinvented version of papare, and that will be demonstrated by Chef Bledar Kola on the other side of Tirana. Bledar, the floor is yours.
Hello, guys. I'm really happy to be part of this demo and to show my version or our version of a simple dish that came from a very poor times. Like most of the fundamental recipes of every cuisine comes from the poor times that people went through and had to make something out of that. I'm not sure if there is something I can learn about papara after all this speech, but I will show you my take on papara. The idea of making something that was so simple, but that brings you back on time, is like a time machine. But also we have to be conscious that it doesn't mean that we have to eat like 400 years ago, because if we want to have the cuisine in the same level, we have to have the same lifestyle. So our lifestyle has changed, so even the cuisine has to be updated somehow without changing the authenticity of the dish. I try to make it very simple. The dish, the only thing that I added to the dish is a simple, a very simple ingredient, which will come through the time. I prefer to use a lot of butter in my cooking, and this is the time that really butter plays a big role to the dish. So dark bread, butter, salted butter. You just pan fry this. I think the butter has to go through a stage that has this nutty flavor, otherwise it will not do the job. Most of the dishes have to be touched by hand. So this is one of them, that with the stale bread, pan fry that. So you have this almond flavor through the dish, and the butter does a great job for this. After we give a bit of pan frying to the dish, while that is doing, we are getting ready with the cheese. We have two ingredients, or three, with the butter, which is the bread, the cheese, which is unsalted cheese. And to add an extra touch to this dish, or the balance to the saltiness, we use the whey, which adds the salt. But it's very important that the bread has to go through a caramelization. Otherwise, it doesn't have the basic flavors of childhood. What we added to the dish is a leaf, which in Albanian is called Kola. In English is a nasturtium. The reason why I add this flavor to the dish is because the nasturtium has this flavor of cabbage and pepper. So these are the two ingredients that really are behind my head when I think of childhood cooking. And so to add an extra emotional feeling to the dish, I thought of this simple ingredient, and it will be in a shape of dolma, which is like a yaprak. So the whole thing will be together, deep fried, with no salt, because the whey is salted. So the whole thing is always coming together. I didn't want to use other strong flavors like onion, garlic, oregano, and everything else, because the whole dish has to have the flavor of three simple ingredients. Because of the texture of the dish, it's let's say, it doesn't have a very special kind of different textures of flavors. It's very basic. So that's the reason why we are using this one. And it's very, very simple. Like, we just take the thing, you put it here, and you just serve it like that, like a thick cigar. And of course, the question comes to the audience, or from the audience, people say, "Oh, is this traditional? This leaf, Kola?" I'm not sure if it has been used during the times that we eat papara, but like I said, it has to. The cuisine has to evolve from the basic of flavors to get adjusted to the modern lifestyle that we are living now. So having cheese, bread, and the leaf here, which is a very, very simple dish, can be a snack in the afternoon, or a dish that you can have before the dinner or lunch. So it needs to get a bit cold. So a small bites, kafshata, must be the perfect description of this dish. Something that you really don't have to think about it, and that's cooking. In general, cooking should be a relaxation, a meditation, that you don't have to get stressful. The moment the cooking gets complex and you get stressful, you don't enjoy that. That's not anymore cooking. So it has to be a laid-back kind of experience when you cook something, and of course it has to have the memory and the story behind that, which is very important. Because we need to know where we came from to see where we're gonna go. Sorry, guys, my English is not very good, but after a long day of work, perhaps it's a bit not so good. I hope you enjoyed the dish. You know, very simple and basic.
Thank you. Thank you, Bledar. Thank you, everybody. Now it's the time. I hope you enjoyed both cooking demos. Unfortunately, we cannot transfer taste and smell via technology, but I'm sure they have a great taste. Now we have a few questions which I would like to read, and probably some of the either myself or other panelists will answer. The first question is there any difference between Greek and Ottoman Empire influenced food and Albanian food? Now, first, in our own knowledge, the Ottoman Empire actually is a collection of several cultures. So what's Ottoman actually, it contains, it's Albanian, it's Greek, it's all the nationalities that were under the Ottoman Empire. So I didn't get exactly the question. Is there any difference between the Greek influence, the Ottoman influence in Albanian food, or is there any difference between all of them? Either way, I believe that the Albanian food, it's, I would say, on its own, on its own territories, on the southern part, maybe it has some more similarities with the Greek. Be that on the production of dairy products, techniques of the production of dairy products, or techniques of preserving different types of foods. But as far of the Ottoman, that's not easy to say the similarities between Albanian and Ottoman, because we have many cases where several dishes we don't know, even though some believe that they are taken from the Ottoman Empire or have the Ottoman influence. There are others who believe that Albanians sent those dishes there, and vice versa. I don't know. Would you like Dorota to have a comment on that? I need Dorota, you're not unmuted yet.
Sorry. As I said, the cuisines are determined by the ingredients, and the ingredients are found in different territories, so and in different climates and biodiversity. So ours, for sure, it's different from Turkish cuisine, but the Ottoman cuisine, because we're talking about the Ottoman cuisine, has has influenced massively in the Balkan cuisine, Greek cuisine, etc. During the Ottoman Empire, the sultans ate very, very rich foods with a Persian influence, because we should remember that the Persian played a crucial important influence in the Ottoman cuisines. While the modern Turkish cuisine changed more to fresh vegetables and than the traditional Ottoman cuisine. Also, the Greek cuisine is different, very, very good, influenced by the seafood, and the territory is different from the Turkish one. But as you mentioned, Nikoline, we also have influenced the Ottoman cuisine. A lot of our dishes you can find now in Istanbul, like elbasani tava, you know, the tavas, the casseroles that, or pistil tava, or I think, I mean, it's not that I cut with a knife this opinion, but some sweets that you can't find now in the Ottoman cuisine, but they're in Albania. So you find them in Albania, like shecherpare. I don't know exactly, because I have to have a comparative study of all these cuisines, but for sure the Ottoman cuisine has influenced not only the Balkan cuisine and the cuisines of a lot of Ottoman empire countries, but also they arrived up to the south of Italy. So yes, we have given, but we have taken a lot. So we have a lot of recipes in common, but they have been shaped according to the ingredients and you know, the touches that Albanian population has given according to the herbs and to the spices that we have in our countries, and that are not found in Turkey or Greece, etc.
Thank you, Dorata. Actually, in addition to that, we also believe that in our studies as well, because we have already, as Renaud established a database of 350 recipes, which we are now in the process of no, I don't want to use the word cleaning, but
screening
and comparing them, and basically on the process of codifying them and making. I don't want to use the word standardizing, but somehow codifying them. And from what we have seen, it proves the point that Albanian cuisine is a melting pot, which is a good thing. We don't see it as a, well, I mean, we see it as a good thing, a melting pot of Mediterranean, Ottoman, and the Balkan cuisine. But it has the specific flavors, what Dorata mentioned, of our ingredients. And we often take the example, and we have some thousand of olive trees around Tirana that are more than 500 years old. So only that example shows you that, you know, people have been feeding from those olives and making olive and cooking a lot more prior to, let's say, the Ottomans or Slavs or came and we exchanged with them. So we really believe that ingredients are the real, make the real difference in gastronomy. The next question is, what are the best Albanian cookbooks, websites, blogs in English? Now, I know that one of the cookbooks which we actually cooked today, Papara, is Mulligio's cookbook called The New Albanian Cuisine, which is at the moment in German, but very soon will be translated in English and in Albanian as well, because we don't have it in Albanian. Another cookbook, a great cookbook in English, which will be published soon. Speaking of websites, blogs, a great blog, not a blog, but a social media where you can find in English as well is Lugargend from Dorata, where Dorata publishes often the recipes that she collected. And also a cookbook which Dorata is just going to share now that is on the process of being published. Am I right, Dorata?
I wanted to share with participants this cookbook that newly came. It shows about the history and culinary gastronomy of Tirana region. It is written. I'm very happy to share it with you. We just published it. It's in English and Albanian, so it shows the history, the food history of this region, and also very old and rare recipes of Tirana. Very soon we're going to, we're working, as Nikoline mentioned, in producing a cookbook about food recipes of Albanian cuisine. So maybe next year we will have a new one.
Yeah,
But yeah,
also-
sure. This is called Culinary. We produced this book because Tirana had the 100th anniversary as the capital of Albania. So we came out with this book last November.
Thank you, Dorata. Gazmen, the next question is for you. Is the course, The Unbearable Similarity of Other Food History and Identity in the Balkans, lectures and readings available online anywhere?
Available online, it's not like posted online. That's what I understand. But if you want to enroll in the course, you can enroll. You don't need to be a degree-seeking student. You can enroll by paying, of course, the fees. But online, it's not offered online. But thank you very much, because with the Zoom and everything that is happening now with the pandemic, education also will change, and maybe some of the courses at least will be offered online. But can I also say something about the Ottoman and the the Balkans are part of the Mediterranean, and as Fernand Braudel says, the Mediterranean are the center of the world, in the sense that every kind of merchant movement converges to the Mediterranean, and that means also that all kinds of gastronomic traditions have converged in the Mediterranean since ancient times. Now, in terms of food pathways, yes, the Balkans share very common food pathways with the Ottoman cuisine. In Greece, in Bulgaria, especially in the Western Balkans, and including Greece. But we should not forget that the Ottoman cuisine itself, it was created over many centuries, 5 centuries, and it was a cuisine that kind of absorbed local and bigger traditions, gastronomic tradition. For example, let's take the eggplants. The cooking of the eggplants and the eggplants itself in Europe and in the Balkans, they were brought by Jewish refugees. In the Balkans, they were brought by Sephardic Jews who were expelled from Spain, and they brought their own cuisine in the Balkans. So the Sephardic Jews, the Ladino cuisine is part of the Ottoman cuisine. Also, the Balkans have these characteristics of being, on the one hand, a melting pot, but on the other hand, because also they are a mountainous region and communication is not easy from part to part, local traditions are very much developed. You can see this, for example, in Albania, with the incredible diversity of the local traditional costumes, especially for women. It's unbelievable. You find totally different traditional costumes from village to village. So it's a melting pot, but at the same time with a very strong local flavor always. And do not forget also the social dimensions. I mean, in the Ottoman Empire, those living in the villages ate other food, more poor food. Those living in the cities ate another kind of food. And when we say the Ottoman Empire, the food in the Ottoman Empire, we mean the food that came as a model from the Sultan Palace, as it did, for example, in France, and those dishes that were created in the cities. But we know very little about what kind of dishes and what kind of traditions were created in the villages. The other thing is that after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, there was this kind of effort to nationalize the cuisines, because it was no empire, national identity, everything should be national, and it reached even, you know, ludicrous points. For example, by changing the names of the dishes, the Turkish coffee was rebaptized in Greek coffee or Bosniak coffee or whatever. But Albania Albania has also another specificity. Albania is more of a crossroad than other Balkan countries. So in Albania converge also you can find influences of the Austrian-Hungarian cuisine. You can find influences of the Venetian or the Italian cuisine. And from this point of view, I think that that what Nikoline said, Albania is a melting pot, and by recognizing this is very good. Then by building different labels about, there is no purity in food. There is no purity. Food and gastronomy show us that cultures interact all the time. That's a lie that cultures are absolutely different. No, they interact all the time. But at the same time, what I like with Orno is that they want also to localize culture, to see what are the local traditions. We know that we come from bigger traditions, and that's good. That's why the food is so rich. But what do the local people, how do they adjust this tradition? How do they reinterpret this tradition? That's amazing, and that's the evolution of gastronomy.
Thank you, Gazi. Now I have just two more questions now, which I will answer quickly. For Dorata, where can I find the research on the recipe? And that will be found on the Instagram and Facebook of Luga Argent. The link is on the link of the event. If you go under the profile of Dorata, you'll find the link there. The next question is there no representative in Canada? No, not yet. We're looking to expand our network. Next question is the book, The New Albanian Cuisine, going to be available in English and Spanish? Yes, very soon it's going to be available in English. Not any plans yet for Spanish. Thank you for your question. And that will be all the questions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much to the audience who spend their time to listen about the Albanian gastronomy. Thank you, Gazman. Thank you, Dorata. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, everybody. And I hope you liked what we had to say about the Albanian gastronomy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.